But the more I think, the fewer words I find. With those words, silence enveloped them, wrapping around like a silk shroud. Laelani wanted to fill the void with confessions, apologies, yet the weight of her loyalty to her husband felt insurmountable. She glanced at the canvases behind him, the chaotic bursts of color resonating like fragments of her past and uncharted future. They told stories of her longing for freedom, for passion. Yet they screeched to a halt when it came to Desmond. "Isn't that the problem?" she finally asked, breaking the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "We don't know how to talk anymore." Desmond took a step closer, the air thickening between them. "Talking won't change what is, Laelani. You feel it too." He held her gaze, his eyes a storm of emotions, inviting yet filled with challenges. "You can choose the comfort of your past or the uncertainty of me." The words lingered, pulsating in the air like the brush of an artist's stroke against canvas. The world beyond her studio faded. There was only the two of them, standing on the precipice of decision, the heart of their storm threatening to either drown them or set them free. She stepped toward him, the distance between them dissolving as her pulse quickened with each footfall. "And if I choose you?" The question hung like a fragile thread, both a promise and a dare. His lips curved into a wry smile that barely concealed the depths of his resolve. "Then we embrace chaos, together." Laelani closed the space between them, the warmth radiating from Desmond enveloping her, igniting a connection that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. "What if I'm not ready?" Her voice shook as she leaned in, breath mingling, creating sweet tension in the air. Desmond's hand brushed against her cheek, gentle yet electrifying. "You'll never be ready, but is that a reason to hold back?" In that moment, Laelani felt the walls she built around her heart begin to crumble. She could see a future one illuminated by the passion Desmond offered, shadowed by the fear of the unknown. Desmond leaned down slightly, his breath brushing her lips, an invitation teetering on the edge of reality. "Do you want this?" he murmured, uncertainty flickering in his gaze as he sought hers. "Yes." The word escaped her, bold and unfiltered. It was a declaration, not merely a response. Desmond's lips found hers, igniting an inferno that sparked deep within her core. The kiss was a tapestry of confusion, longing, and desire, weaving itself around them as they melted into one another, the world outside becoming a distant memory. As their lips disconnected, breathless and charged, Laelani knew this choice would change everything. She glanced over her shoulder at the canvases they had left behind, whispers of a life once familiar but now chaotic and full of risks. "Desmond," she murmured, realization dawning in the silence. "I don't know if I can break free, but I want to try, with you." "Then let's craft a new canvas," he whispered back, his voice a gentle breeze against her skin. Together, they stood at the intersection of fear and desire, ready to rewrite their fates in the fleeting wildfire of that kiss. Choices loomed like storm clouds, but for now, in that moment, clarity burst like sunlight through the storm. Scene 33. The collision. Laelani Sinclair stood at the edge of the overgrown garden, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine. Raindrops dripped from the eaves of the crumbling mansion, the harsh patter echoing her turmoil. The weather had turned, dark clouds swirling ominously above, mirroring the tempest within her heart. She was poised at a precipice, trapped between duty and desire. Her chest heaved, each breath punctuated by memories that haunted her. Desmond's laughter echoing in her mind and her husband's cold indifference suffocating her spirit. A sudden rustle in the nearby hedges broke her reverie, and her pulse quickened. In an instant, she pivoted, eyes wide, scanning the garden for movement. Desmond emerged, drenched but defiant, his shirt clinging to his form, accentuating the muscular lines of his body. His brow was furrowed, determination radiating from him as he pressed forward, fists clenched and eyes aflame. "We have to go," Desmond urged, glancing over his shoulder. "Now!" The urgency in his voice ignited something in her, a fierce yearning intermingled with dread. She nodded, swallowing hard, acutely aware of the gravity of their situation. The warmth of his presence ignited a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. He was her lifeline. "Where's the car?" Laelani asked, her voice barely a whisper, drowned out by a clap of thunder reverberating through the air. "By the driveway," he replied, extending his hand. "We have to move fast." Laelani hesitated for a heartbeat, but took his hand, feeling the shock of electricity surge between them. The rain poured down, soaking them instantly as they sprinted towards the street. Before they could reach the driveway, a black SUV thundered around the corner, tires screeching. "Desmond, look out!" Laelani screamed, pulling him just as the vehicle barreled past, a blur of black menace. It skidded to a halt, and the doors flung open, armed men spilling onto the scene. "Run!" Desmond shouted, yanking her along as they darted into the underbrush, the chaos echoing behind them. Their footfalls were pounding reminders of their frantic escape as they ducked behind a thicket. Laelani pressed against Desmond, breathless, chests heaving in unison, a shared panic in the storm-soaked night. "Think we lost them?" Desmond panted, glancing back. The tension in his body was palpable, coiled like a spring. "No, they'll be out for blood," Laelani replied, her voice steady despite the quivers of fear. "Carlos won't stop until he finds us." Desmond's gaze locked onto hers, his dark eyes a casino of raw emotion. For a moment, nothing else existed, just the space between them, charged and electric. It was more than fear. It was desire, tangled with danger, a heady cocktail stirring inside her as adrenaline coursed through her veins. They were at the edge of everything. The two men who had emerged from the SUV shouted to each other, swarming the garden with precision. Their voices mingled with the rain, creating an orchestra of dread that crescendoed around them. Suddenly, Laelani's heart leapt as a figure stepped forward, a sleek silhouette emerging from the shadows. It was Amani, her childhood friend and an unexpected ally. "This way!" she called, motioning for them to follow her into the darkness of the trees. Desmond shot Laelani a questioning look, and she nodded, her trust unwavered. They squeezed into the narrow escape route, adrenaline pushing them forward. Amani led them deeper into the thicket, where the air was cooler and fragrant with wet foliage. "What are you doing here?" Laelani gasped as they ducked low, hurried but unsheltered from the downpour. "I tracked you down," Amani replied, her breath coming out in quick bursts. "Carlos has eyes everywhere. He didn't want you leaving." A distant shout punctuated the night, causing Laelani's heart to race anew. But as they pressed on, Laelani felt the warmth of Desmond's body next to hers, a steady reassurance in the storm. "This isn't just about us, Laelani," Desmond murmured softly, their proximity charged with unspoken promises. "We're in deeper than I ever thought. Now, it's about survival." Just as Laelani opened her mouth to reply, they fell into deeper shadows, the rain washing the chaos away, if only momentarily. She met Desmond's gaze, and in that breathless silence, she felt the gravity of their intertwined fates, a precarious balance on the edge of a knife. The sound of approaching footsteps pulled them back to the present, the predatory realities crashing down as they braced themselves against the encroaching storm. Scene 34. The chase intensifies. Laelani Sinclair pressed her back against the cool, textured wall of the narrow alley, breathless, heart-racing like the thunderous rhythm of drums in carnival season. Rivulets of rain-soaked air twisted around her, mingling the scent of fresh asphalt with the distant sound of sirens. Outside the sanctuary of shadows, chaos erupted in vivid bursts, voices shouting, tires screeching, and the unmistakable crack of gunfire punctuating the night. "Are you sure we lost them?" Desmond Carver's voice sliced through the clamoring noise as he peered around the corner, his posture rigid, muscles poised like a coiled spring. His dark eyes, usually alight with playful mischief, were now filled with a sharp urgency. She sensed his tumult, felt it echo within her as he turned back to her, absorbing her every feature, scrutinizing her with more than just concern. "For the moment," she replied, her voice a wavering whisper. But she could feel the world tightening around them, their breathing synchronizing in the thick tension. "They won't stop, not now." Desmond stepped closer, brushing a thumb across her cheek, the surface cool yet electric, igniting a blaze within her core. "Then we need a plan. We can't just stand here, Laelani, they're hunting for us." Every inch of her being buzzed with both danger and desire. "And what do you suggest? Throw ourselves into the streets and hope they don't see us?" Her fingers curled into fists as her frustration erupted. "We're not superheroes, Desmond. This is not a game." The vulnerability that hounded her sparked a fierce glint in his gaze. "We have to take risks. You know I'd never let anything happen to you." The sincerity in his voice, so often laced with wit, was now stripped raw. Just then, from the mouth of the alley, a metallic crash erupted, a signal of their pursuers closing in. The sound of boots, hundreds of them, echoed like a menacing chant growing closer. Laelani's heart pounded against her ribcage, urging her to flee. "Desmond," she warned, the edge of panic sharp on her tongue. A fleeting moment of hesitation passed between them, unspoken tension crackling like a live wire. There was an unmistakable understanding shimmering in the air. The chase, their secrets, the perilous desire that lingered between them, yearning to break free. Desmond took her hand, grounding her in this chaotic moment. "Let's move," he urged, their fingers entwined as they slipped deeper into shadow, adrenaline threading through their veins. They navigated through a labyrinth of back streets, weaving past graffiti-streaked walls that whispered untold stories of despair and resilience. Meanwhile, in another corner of the city, Vinny, Laelani's husband, paced his extravagant office, a stark contrast to the gritty streets. The layered scents of expensive cigars mingled with the bitter coffee that sat, forgotten and cold, on his desk. He balled his hands into fists, rage coursing through him like fire igniting paper. "Find them," he barked at one of his underlings, a man clad in a tailored suit who practically quaked under Vinny's simmering wrath. "I want them before the sun rises. If you fail me, I'll make sure your mistake becomes your last." Right away, boss," stammered the timid man, scrambling out of the office like a beaten dog. Back in the alley, Laelani and Desmond pressed forward, emotions echoing in their every glance. The rain began to taper off, droplets clinging to their skin, unadulterated droplets that could just as easily be tears. "Desmond, if we survive this," she breathed, her voice softening, yearning to erase the urge for survival with something tender. But the sound of distant voices interrupted them. They were almost there. "We will survive," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, an intimate gesture that felt safe amidst the encroaching darkness. "But we need to trust in each other. It's the only way." A fierce flash of jealousy coursed through her, and she snapped, the frustration bubbling over once more. "Trust? How can I trust you when I don't even know if you're telling me the truth about any of this? Do you think I wanted to be your driver? I never wanted to be the help, Laelani. You think I'm like them? Think again." His voice was a mix of anger and pleading, as if unraveling in front of her. She took a breath, steeling herself as she looked deeply into his eyes. Trust was a fragile thread between them, woven with both betrayal and desire. "Then let's make this count. No more lies." As they pushed further into the heart of the city, the surrounding chaos faded in a haze behind them, the pursuit fierce but less urgent. The firestorm of their emotions flared brightly, illuminating the dark corners of their complicated bond. Laelani clutched Desmond's hand tighter, knowing full well that whatever lay ahead would define their fate. She could feel it, the soothing warmth of his skin against hers anchoring them. Together, then, until the end. "Together," he promised, the resolve in his voice echoing through the shadows. As they raced toward the unknown, the storm brewed behind them, half fear and half fervent hope, intertwining like their fates in a dance of survival. Scene 35, Betrayed and Revealed. The late afternoon light sifted through the tall windows of Laelani Sinclair's studio, illuminating specks of dust that pirouetted in the air like trapped dreams. Her easel stood before a half-finished canvas, an abstract swirl of colors that mirrored her inner turmoil. With every brushstroke, she poured her confusion and passion into the piece, yet every attempt felt like a betrayal to the woman she used to be, the dutiful wife of Malcolm Sinclair, an esteemed crime lord. Laelani sighed, setting the brush down and examining her creation. There was love in the chaos, but it felt muddied by uncertainty and desire, a duality that threatened to consume her. The door creaked open gently, a familiar sound that sent a fluttering sensation through her chest. Desmond Carver, whose presence now electrified her mundane existence. "Thought you'd locked yourself away in here," he said, his voice a silken drawl. He stepped inside, the late sun casting his silhouette against the doorframe, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the light. The tension shifted as he approached, that mix of danger and allure sparking in the air. "I needed to clear my head," Laelani replied, brushing a curl of hair behind her ear, trying to ignore the way her heart raced. "It's difficult to think with Malcolm constantly around." Desmond's expression softened momentarily, revealing a flicker of understanding behind his playful facade. "You can't keep doing this, Laelani. You're a vibrant artist, and He paused, weighing his words. "He doesn't see your color." A silence enveloped them, thick and trembling. Laelani turned her gaze from the canvas to Desmond, feeling an unexpected vulnerability emerge. "Sometimes I don't see it either. I feel like I'm losing pieces of myself." "And what if I told you I want to help you find them?" he said, stepping closer. The air shimmered between them, laden with unspoken promises. He reached forward, brushing his fingers against the back of her hand, igniting warmth that traveled through her. Every touch sent ripples through her resolve, the weight of their unacknowledged connection palpable. "Desmond," Laelani started, breath hitching as she struggled for clarity amidst a rush of emotions. But the sound of their hearts beating in tandem consumed her thoughts, scattering the hushed words before they could take form. A sudden bang echoed from the hallway, a door slamming shut, followed by voices rising in argument. Laelani recoiled instinctively, but Desmond placed a steadying hand on her arm. "Whatever that is, just keep your focus on us," he urged softly. His blue eyes anchored her, urging her to forget the chaos outside their bubble, just for a moment. The warmth of his palm against her skin felt like the sun breaking through a clouded sky. In that fleeting second, the world around them faded. It was just Desmond and Laelani, raised in a whirl of everything she was, art, desires, fears, encapsulated in a single moment suspended in time. Before all of this, Desmond's voice lowered to a murmur, almost a whisper. "I was just a driver. And now—" He shook his head, the vulnerability hanging heavily in the air. "Now I'm here, standing before the most beautiful woman I've ever known. It feels unreal." Her breath quickened, anticipation curling in her stomach. Desmond stepped closer, eyes never leaving hers, reading her like the canvas that waited to be painted. The room swirled around them. Every unvoiced word amplified the gravity of what stood between want and the threat of their unraveling lives. "Take a chance with me," he breathed, his face mere inches from hers. The warmth between their bodies felt electric, a palpable intimacy that enveloped every corner of the studio, erasing all doubts. Just then, the noise from the hallway escalated, voices rising dangerously. Malcolm's voice growled low, sharp with accusations, cutting through their moment like a knife. Instinctively, Laelani pulled back, an unsettling rush of fear tugging at her. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Desmond glanced to the door, tension wrapping around him, but his focus returned to her, determination hardening his gaze. "We can't let them sever this connection. We're fighting for something real." The moment stretched breathless until he pressed forward, capturing her lips with his. The kiss was a revelation, an unspoken promise against tumultuous betrayal, a mingling of two worlds colliding amid chaos. Laelani melted into him, her fears momentarily forgotten. As quickly as it began, the kiss deepened into a fervor that swept her off her feet. But the outside world was relentless, and reality began creeping back in, cold and demanding. Desmond's hands cradled her face, yet the intrusion of Malcolm's booming voice shattered the intimacy they had created. They both pulled away, breaths ragged, eyes wide with urgency. "We need to go. You need to leave," Laelani said, her heart racing as she realized the danger was no longer a distant threat. "Oh, we will," Desmond replied, determination etched on his face as he stepped back, ready to lead them both into the unknown. As they moved toward the door, Laelani cast one last glance back at the canvas, the colors swirling as if alive before following Desmond into the frenzy awaiting them. Trust, already a fragile lifeline, felt like the thin thread that could unravel their fate entirely. "Whatever happens next, we face it together," Desmond murmured as he grasped her hand. Laelani nodded, adrenaline coursing through her veins, and perhaps, amidst the chaos of betrayal, a flicker of hope ignited. Scene 36, Rebirth of Resolve. In the subdued light of the sleek kitchen, Laelani Sinclair stood at the marble counter, her fingers lingering over the vibrant array of vegetables spread out before her. The sun cast a warm glow through the large window, illuminating the colorful produce but failing to brighten the heaviness weighing on her chest. Each slice of the chef's knife sent a crisp sound slicing through the silence, a bitter reminder of the tasteless dinners she had prepared for her husband Arthur, filled with the same blandness as her life with him. "Why are you even trying, Laelani?" A voice broke through her concentration, smooth as silk but tinged with an edge. Desmond Carver leaned casually against the doorframe, his dark eyes penetrating, capturing her in their depths. "You know he won't appreciate any of this." She paused, the knife hovering above a ripe tomato, its rich red hue mirroring her conflicted emotions. "I do it for myself, Desmond, not for him." The words came out sharper than she intended, infused with an underlying sadness. With measured steps, Desmond approached, his presence both grounding and electrifying. "But you're pouring your soul into something that doesn't reflect who you are." He reached out, gently pulling the knife from her grasp and setting it down. The electric connection between them sparkled in the charged air. "You want more than this, and you know it." Laelani turned to face him fully, her brow furrowing in defiance. "And what makes you the expert on my desires? You think you can just enter my life and dictate what I should feel?" She held his gaze, challenging him to argue. His lips curled slightly, revealing that devil-may-care charm that made it impossible for her to look away. "I'm not dictating, love. I'm just trying to help you see the reality." In the delicate balance of their stoic confrontation, vulnerability briefly flared in his eyes, a glimpse of the raw longing hidden beneath his tenacity. As the tension swelled like a brewing storm, their argument shifted. "You don't get to play the knight in shining armor when you're just as entangled in this mess as I am," she said, frustration lacing her tone. "You have your own agenda, Desmond. You're not here for me. You're here for your own revenge." "Maybe it started that way," he admitted, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "But I'm here now. I'm in this with you." The space between them pulsed with unuttered desires, both of them holding secrets they feared might unravel their fragile trust. Laelani's heart raced, a mixture of fear and exhilaration flooding her senses. "What do you want from me, Desmond?" she breathed, the weight of the question heavy between them. Desmond's gaze softened, his fierce determination momentarily giving way to sincerity. "I want you to take control. Stop hiding your artistry, your spirit. It's not just about your husband anymore. It's about you reclaiming your life." Suddenly, a crash echoed from the living room, jolting them from their tense standoff. Laelani shot him a questioning look, and they both raced toward the noise. In the dimly lit room, they found Arthur, having knocked over a table lamp in a fit of rage, cursing under his breath as he fought against the broken pieces. "Damn it!" he shouted, shaking his fist. Desmond glanced at Laelani, his expression a mixture of concern and amusement. "Perfect timing," he said wryly, nudging her toward the scene. "Leave it, Desmond," Laelani warned quietly, sensing a storm brewing within her husband. She could see the fissures in Arthur's angry façade, scattered bills and threatening letters from colleagues he had wronged, rattled with the table. "He's on edge." "He's always on edge," Desmond replied, glancing back at Arthur, who was frantically searching for anything to blame. With an instinctual pull, Laelani reached out, grabbing Desmond's hand and pulling him back towards the kitchen. "Stay focused," she whispered, the intensity between them shifting once more dangerously close to a precipice. Her heart accelerated as they moved together, their fingers entwined, creating an unspoken bond amidst the chaos unfolding just a few steps away. "Together, then, we can find a way through this," Desmond said, his voice a steady anchor in the storm. Laelani nodded, the rush of unadulterated hope igniting within her. "Together," she echoed, their resolve intertwining like vines ready to bloom despite the harshest conditions. As they faced the uncertainty ahead, the makings of a turbulent plan brewed, a mixture of adrenaline and determination, igniting flames previously subdued. "Let's get to work," she declared, an ember of energy sparking in her heart, igniting fire in her resolve to reclaim her life once and for all. Scene 37. Searching for safety. The rhythm of the rain tapped against the car's windshield, a symphony of chaos blending with the bright neon lights of the city that flickered like restless spirits in the dark. Desmond Carver leaned into the steering wheel, his jaw tightening as he navigated the slick roads of downtown. Laelani Sinclair sat beside him, her heart racing with each turn, a mix of exhilaration and fear pulsing through her veins. The air inside the car was thick with unspoken words, the silence wrapped around them like a heavy blanket. "Did you have to drive like a madman?" Laelani snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut through the tension. She glanced out the window, where shadows loomed at the edges of the neon glow. We could have taken a more discreet route. Desmond gripped the wheel tighter, eyes narrowed against the rain. Discreet is not the same as safe. We need to get far away from... From what? Your very noble mission to save me from my husband? Her laugh was hollow, tinged with bitterness. The sudden shift in her tone made Desmond's temper flare. He glanced at her, then returned his attention to the road. You know he won't stop until he finds us. Desmond's voice was cold, practically slicing the air between them. The truth hung heavily in the vehicle, and though they shared a goal, the wound of betrayal simmered beneath their skin. Laelani turned to him, anger and vulnerability clashing in her emerald eyes. And you think running away solves everything? It doesn't change what we've done, Desmond. It doesn't erase the fact that I betrayed him. For a moment, the car was swallowed by silence, each heartbeat echoing between them like an impending storm. It was a pause, filled with acknowledgement, the weight of their choices making the air feel almost electric. Desmond finally broke the quiet, his voice softer now, a note of understanding woven in. I don't want to make this about you and him. It's about us. Don't you see that? He risked a glance, searching her face. We have to face this together. Together? You mean like the way you want me, or how you think I want you? Laelani leaned back, a mix of defiance and hurt twisting her features. What if we're just running from ourselves? Desmond shook his head, an uncharacteristic vulnerability breaking through his bravado. I'm not running, Laelani. I'm trying to help you. I want. He faltered, struggling to articulate his tumultuous feelings. I don't know what I want anymore, but I know I can't lose you. Laelani looked away, her breath catching in her throat. This wasn't just about escape. It was about unmasking the truths they had buried too deep. Every moment spent in the presence of danger ignited a fire within her, a dangerous thrill, an undeniable spark, but each spark also threatened to incinerate everything she held dear. Meanwhile, just blocks away, Marcus, Laelani's husband and the formidable crime boss, paced in his dimly lit office. He received a frantic update from Sylvia, the loyal henchwoman who was on a relentless hunt for his runaway wife. They took the route through Westview. We'll intercept them well before dawn. Sylvia glanced up, her eyes flashing with determination. But you need to be ready, Marcus. They're not just running, they're plotting. Plotting? Marcus scoffed, tossing his head back with a dismissive laugh. This isn't some fairy tale, Sylvia. She thinks she can escape me? Yes, and Desmond is more than a mere driver now. Sylvia leaned closer, her voice low and conspiratorial. You need to act fast. The longer you wait, the harder they become to track. You can't let them slip away like this. Not again. Marcus felt a surge of anger that churned deep in his gut. One way or another, they'll learn the cost of betrayal, he muttered, the promise of retribution hanging in the air. Back in the car, Laelani reached for Desmond's hand, their fingers entwining instinctively amid the turmoil. What if we can't go back? Her voice was a whisper, vulnerability painted across her features. Desmond squeezed her hand, grounding himself in her warmth. Then we find a way to move forward, together. That moment, enveloped in shared breath and are both aware of the relentless storm battering against the car, could be both an ending and a beginning. Their fates entwined, and Laelani felt the gravity of their choices, the allure of the unknown beckoning them toward each other. Together, she echoed quietly, a fragile hope emerging from the chaos that surrounded them. Scene 38, Drawing Lines. The elegant drawing room was filled with a charged silence, thick enough to cut with a knife. An ornate chandelier cast a warm glow over Laelani Sinclair as she stood by the window, her fingers tracing patterns along the cool glass. Outside, the city pulsed with life, but inside these walls, time seemed suspended, suffocatingly so. Are you even listening to me? Desmond Carver's voice broke through the quiet. His arms were crossed tightly over his chest, muscles coiling like a bowstring. The tension in his jaw twitched with each word, his frustration unable to contain itself in the elegant space burdened with their secrets. Laelani turned, the sunlight catching the glint of her eyes, a storm brewing behind them. What's there to listen to, Desmond? You're just angry because I won't let you tell me what to do. She stepped forward, the pulse of their argument igniting a fire beneath the cool surface of her demeanor. Do you think this is about control? Desmond shook his head, his voice a low growl. "This is about protecting you. Your husband." "My husband," Laelani snapped, the words sharp enough to slice through the mounting tension, "is a man I chose. I knew what I was getting into. You don't get to decide what's right for me." In that moment, their eyes locked, a fleeting silence wrapping them in bitterness and longing. Desmond shifted his weight, the muscles in his shoulders twitching with unspent energy. "But I didn't know, Laelani. I didn't know you were suffocating until now." The honesty hung between them, raw and wild. "And what do you think you can do about it? Sweep in and save me?" She turned away, gripping the edge of the window frame, her nails digging in, releasing the frustration into the air. "You can't save me. No one can save me but myself." As the words left her mouth, the sound of footsteps approached. A slow, deliberate knock broke the fragile moment. It was Milo, Laelani's husband's loyal right-hand man, entering with a casual air that only intensified the atmosphere. "Laelani," he greeted, eyes darting between the two, noting every tension-laden pause. "Your husband is asking for you." Desmond tensed, his jaw tightening as he took a step closer to Laelani. Now, he has no idea what. "Enough, Desmond." Laelani's interjection startled them both. "I can handle this." She turned to Milo, masking the storm inside her with a calm veneer. "Tell him I'll be there shortly." Milo nodded, but a spark of concern flickered in his eyes. "He's not in a good mood. You might want to." "Have you ever met my husband?" Laelani interrupted again, her patience fraying. "He's always in a bad mood." While Milo shifted on his feet, Desmond shot him a sharp look, resentment simmering beneath the surface. The intimacy of their tension had been punctured, and now they had an audience. "You shouldn't go, Laelani," Desmond said, edging closer. "It's not safe." "It's my life," she said, exhaling slowly. "You may have dreams of who I should be, but I'm tired, Desmond, tired of pretending it's not a prison." As she spoke, her body language betrayed her, the slight tremor in her hands, the glisten of unshed tears threatening to overflow. Desmond softened, caught between desire and despair, realizing how those very words wrapped his own heart in a silent bind. Milo shifted awkwardly again. "I'll wait outside," he said, heading toward the door, clearly sensing the need for them to resolve their tumult before it exploded into something uncontrollable. Once the door clicked shut, Laelani turned back to Desmond, her tone shifting, more vulnerable now. "You speak of protection, but are you willing to be there when it gets dangerous?" He stepped closer, closing the distance, his voice a low murmur tempered by urgency. "I will be there, but you have to trust me. Trust that I want more for you than this." The intensity in her gaze flared. "Then what do you want for us?" Desmond's mouth quirked into a smirk, mischief dancing in his eyes. "To paint on a much larger canvas, one with enough room for all our passions and secrets." She held his gaze, taking a step closer, tiptoeing into the abyss of possibility. "Then let's draw those lines, Desmond, together." And just like that, the world outside faded, leaving only their unsteady breaths and unspoken dreams echoing in the charged space. Scene 39, A Dangerous Alliance. The night air was thick with an electric tension, shadows dancing across the slick cobblestone streets of downtown. Desmond Carver stood beside Laelani Sinclair, the moonlight catching the glimmer of anticipation in their eyes. They were leaning against the sleek, black car that had once been a barrier between them and their true selves. A soft breeze stirred, carrying with it the rich scent of blooming jasmine from the nearby park, mingling with the exhaust fumes of the city, a reminder of the contrasting worlds they inhabited. Desmond's heart raced as he recalled the gravity of the alliance they were forming. Each breath felt like a push against an uncertain future. "It's risky, getting involved with them," he said, his voice steady yet simmering with barely contained urgency. "You know who your husband is." Laelani's gaze dropped for a moment, contemplating the turn her life had taken. "I don't care about my husband's power. I care about what we could become." There was a defiance in her voice, yet her vulnerability flickered behind her words. The streetlights flickered ominously, illuminating Desmond's face. It was then that he noticed how much they had come to rely on one another. "If this goes south, you need to know I'll protect you." The grave promise hung between them, weighted and tender. As if by cue, laughter erupted from an adjacent alleyway, drawing their attention. A few figures emerged: Sophie, a savvy strategist with an irreverent sense of humor, accompanied by her brother Jay, a big, boisterous man who could charm the feathers off a bird. They approached with mischief painted on their faces. "Didn't think I'd see the two of you standing around like a pair of love-struck fools," Sophie teased, her eyes sparkling. "Did you forget we have a dangerous alliance to finalize?" Jay clapped Desmond on the shoulder, nearly sending him off balance. "Let me guess, you're here to win her over with your brooding charm?" "Very funny, Jay," Laelani replied, rolling her eyes but unable to suppress a smile. The space between them lightened momentarily, laughter punctuating the darkness. Right, all business," Sophie said, nudging her brother. "But let's not forget our enemies are out there, and they could care less about feelings." Desmond's demeanor shifted back to intensity. "We need to move quickly. If Laelani's husband finds out we're teaming with you two, it won't just be business, it'll be personal." His eyes darted to Laelani, and for a moment the unspoken weight of their shared fear suffused the air. "Let him try," Sophie said defiantly. "With our smarts and your charm, we'll be unstoppable." She confidently cracked her knuckles, though Jay leaned in with mock seriousness. "Or at least hilarious while we're running for our lives." The camaraderie eased the tension for a precious moment, and Laelani felt a shiver of hope, intertwined with fear. She met Desmond's gaze, her heart thudding heavily in her chest. "What happens when we're cornered?" Desmond stepped closer, his breath mingling with hers. "We fight." His voice dropped to a whisper, filled with urgency. "Or we run. Together." At that moment, the world outside their bubble faded. The noise from the street dulled to a faint hum. The synergy between them hung palpably, drawing him in against the backdrop of danger and uncertainty. She leaned in, heart racing, torn between the thrill of their alliance and the impending doom of her marriage. The electric charge between them intensified. The scent of cologne and musk enveloped Laelani as she took a breath, swaying slightly toward him, emboldened. Desmond brushed a stray strand of hair behind her ear, a tender gesture brimming with unspoken promises. "Laelani," he murmured, a meticulous weight to her name. Their lips met in a rush, igniting a firestorm of shared longing and urgency. The chaos of their lives seemed to melt away in that moment, leaving only raw vulnerability and desire. It was nothing less than an impassioned reckoning, a melding of their fates. The kiss deepened with every passing second, rising and falling with the longing of stolen moments and unresolved futures. Then, as quickly as it began, they pulled apart, breathless and wide-eyed. "Okay, enough of that," Sophie exclaimed, clapping her hands, shattering the intimacy like glass. "We've got enemies, remember? Let's save the lovey-dovey for later." Jay's broad grin confirmed their playful jest, but Desmond caught the flicker of concern in Laelani's eyes. "Right, for now we plot our next move," he said, letting a soft chuckle escape, though the implications weighed heavily. As they gathered in preparation for the night ahead, a thought prickled at the back of Desmond's mind. Loyalty is fleeting, especially when desire and secrets intertwine. Scene 40. Facing Demons. In the low light of Laelani Sinclair's studio, the heavy scent of linseed oil mingled with the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Sunlight, filtered through large windows, cast long shadows across the scattered canvases that lined the walls, their vibrant hues muted by the morning haze. Laelani stood before a half-finished painting, a chaotic dance of deep blues and fiery reds, embodying the tempest within her. Her brush hovered in the air, trembling slightly, mirroring the anxiety that twisted in her stomach. Across the room, Desmond Carver leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, an inscrutable expression gracing his face as he observed her. The tension hung thick, no words were needed as their gazes locked, both feeling the weight of unspoken emotions. Laelani's jaw tightened, betraying her turmoil as she finally placed the brush down with a decisive clatter. "You're back early," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet tinged with an urgency that belied the casual remark. Desmond stepped further into the room, the wooden floor creaking underfoot. "You think I'd miss this?" he replied, a half-smile creeping onto his lips, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "You know better than that." Laelani turned her back to him, unable to meet his penetrating stare. She resumed her feigned focus on the painting, but her heart raced as she felt the heat of his presence drawing closer. "It's just a painting, Desmond. You don't have to pretend it's more than that." He stepped up beside her, studying the canvas that reflected her inner chaos. "It's beautiful," he replied softly, but the words hung heavy with unspoken meaning. "You can't hide from it. Whatever's in you has to come out, even in your art." Laelani flinched, reminded of the turmoil gripping her heart. With every brushstroke, she aimed to capture the wild passion that stirred inside, a passion now dangerously tethered to him. Her fingers clenched into fists as she traced the outline of fire erupting from the canvas. "It's not just paint, Desmond. It's everything we're not saying." "That's a dangerous truth," he replied, his voice dropping to a murmur, intent and fierce. "Truth has a way of breaking you apart." She inhaled sharply, cringing at the thought, yet thrill coursed through her. "And what if I like the break?" Laelani turned to him, her resolve faltering as their breaths mingled in the charged air between them. The moment hung suspended, tension twisting like a taut string pulled to its limit. Desmond's gaze dropped to her lips. "Is that why we keep doing this? Because it feels good?" He stepped closer, his warm presence an intoxicating mix of danger and desire. "Because every encounter pulls us deeper into a chaos we both know is dangerous?" "I can't just—" she faltered, biting back the words. "You know my life is more complicated than a fleeting moment." Desmond's expression shifted, a flicker of yearning dancing across his features. "That's exactly why you need this moment, Laelani. You deserve to feel everything, even if it means choosing yourself for once." A soft laugh escaped her, an urgent, nervous release. "And face the wrath of my husband. Because that's what you're asking, isn't it? To dismantle everything I've built for a chance at, what? A love that feels like it might just rip me apart?" He reached for her hand, both of them hesitating as their fingers almost touched, the world outside utterly forgotten. "Sometimes you have to risk it all to find what truly matters," he whispered, his voice low and husky. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the hall, shattering the moment. Laelani jumped back, her heart racing as she smoothed her hair, brushing away the electric connection hanging in the air. "What was that?" "Stay here," Desmond urged, his tone darkening as he stepped swiftly toward the door, muscles coiling with tension, ready to confront whatever threat loomed beyond their fragile bubble of intimacy. As he opened the door, Laelani's heart fluttered, torn between fear and longing. The shadows of her life threatened to catch up, and yet a part of her was already falling, ready to embrace whatever lay beyond. "Desmond," she called, his silhouette framed against the light. He turned back to her, his eyes catching the light intense, unwavering. "Whatever happens, just remember, I might just be ready to break free." Her voice, raw with vulnerability, echoed in the room, brimming with all the unspoken passions and conflicts raging in her soul. Desmond's lips curved into a small smile, laced with a promise. "Then let's face those demons together." And as the sounds of impending chaos drifted closer, the fragile allure of danger drew them both into an uncertain yet exhilarating dance of passion and peril. Scene 41, the storm rages. The murmur of distant thunder grumbled ominously, reflecting the unease brewing in Laelani Sinclair's heart. The grand estate loomed around her, its elegant curves and manicured gardens now drenched in a heavy humidity. The air felt electric, charged with anticipation, as storm clouds cloaked the evening sky in a deep slate threatening to unleash their fury at any moment. Inside, the opulence of the ballroom stood in stark contrast to her roiling thoughts, chandeliers casting fractured light over the gathering throngs of affluent guests, none aware of the tempest on the horizon, both in the skies and within her soul. Laelani stood by a window, the curtain fabric cool against her fingers, gazing out into the horizon. She caught sight of Desmond approaching from the side, his lean form cutting through the crowd with a confident ease. As he neared, a bolt of lightning illuminated the darkening sky, sparking a fierce fire in her chest. The undercurrents of their recent encounters brought forth a turmoil of emotion, swirling like the storm outside. "Thinking about a way out?" Desmond asked, his voice low, carrying a teasing lilt. He positioned himself next to her, both of them momentarily shielded from the glitz and chatter of the party behind them. Laelani turned to him, the scent of rain-soaked earth mingling with his cologne, creating an intoxicating cocktail of desire and danger. "Or thinking about how long I can stand pretending," she replied, her eyes piercing into his, laced with urgency. With a faint smirk, he leaned closer, his warmth enveloping her like a shield. Pretending is overrated. Besides, I'd rather endure a storm with you than stand around with a bunch of bored elites sipping champagne. Just then, a crack of thunder erupted, and the wind howled, rattling the window pane. It was as if the world outside conspired with their unspoken feelings, destiny intertwining their fates. In the gathering darkness, Laelani could see the flickering of candles casting a warm, fragile glow. "Let's skip this farce," he suggested, a hint of dare igniting his tone. "We have mountains to conquer, don't we?" The thought of escaping drew her in like a moth to a flame. Yet the weight of her marriage tugged at her resolve, reminding her of the man whose name she still bore, the very man who ruled an empire with an iron fist. The conflict raged within her, rising like the wind battering the trees outside. "I can't just leave," Laelani said, the tightness in her voice evident. "What about him? What about everything?" "The truth. Everything is a lie," Desmond replied, intensity radiating off him. "You deserve more than the shadow of a man, Laelani. You deserve to be wanted, not just as a trophy or a beautiful decoration in a gilded cage. You deserve passion." Her breath caught, swept away in the tide of his words. The reality of what lay before her, a choice laden with destruction and recklessness, fueled a reckless urge to leap. In that singular moment, the world closed in on them, the music and chatter fading, leaving only her heartbeat and the storm, a tempest echoing her fears and desires. Meanwhile, somewhere across the ballroom, Delilah stood, surveying the crowd with a hawk's watchfulness. She was clad in an elegant emerald green gown that hugged her curves, her dark hair cascading in waves. The mansion, alive with laughter and pretension, belied the raging undercurrents of secrets swirling around her. Delilah's sharp gaze caught sight of her brother, Marcus, lurking near the entrance, a look of frustration clouding his handsome face. "Why do you let her keep him around?" he snapped at Delilah quietly, his voice low but thick with accusation. "You know that driver is just waiting for the wrong moment." "Maybe it's time to let go of control, Marcus," Delilah replied coolly, her lips curving into a sardonic smile. "You know Laelani better than that. She's a force of nature, just like that storm outside. Trying to cage her will only lead to disaster." Just as Delilah finished speaking, lightning lit up the room, illuminating the tension between the pair. Marcus, ever the protector, turned toward the windows, eyes narrowing as rain began to pelt against the glass, each drop a reminder of the chaos that threatened to rain down around them. Back by the window, Laelani and Desmond were drifting closer, caught in a whirlpool of longing. His fingers gently brushed against her cheek, igniting a spark that traveled like electricity down her spine. "I can't hide anymore," Laelani whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of revelation. "I need to break free." Desmond's breath hitched, the world narrowing to just the two of them as the first droplets of rain began cascading down the window, painting their beautiful chaos anew. Outside, a storm raged inside, hearts trembled on the brink. "Then we start now," he said, every syllable laced with fervor, together. In that charged moment, as thunder rolled overhead, Laelani knew the storm was just beginning. Scene 42, amidst chaos. The air in the dimly lit garage was thick with the pungent scent of gasoline, a sharp reminder of the chaos that surrounded them. Flickering fluorescent lights hung overhead, casting ghostly shadows as a cacophony of voices clamored from beyond the heavy steel door. It felt like a heartbeat fast and erratic, echoing the turmoil within Laelani Sinclair's chest. The walls, stained with grease and time, whispered of urgency, much like the weight of her choices, pressing down as danger encroached. Laelani leaned against the cold concrete, arms crossed tightly over her chest, her brow furrowed in thought. She struggled to reconcile the sexy thrill of Desmond's presence with the stark reality of her life growing more precarious. He stood a few feet away, his jaw clenched, dark eyes scanning the space like a hawk surveying its territory, exuding an alluring mixture of danger and confidence. "Why do we keep finding each other in these ridiculous places?" Desmond said, a teasing lilt to his voice that cut through the tension as he arched an eyebrow, his lips quirking into a half-smile. "I have to say, a garage isn't the best setting for romance." Laelani huffed a soft laugh, the sound almost a broken note amidst the chaos. "You think I planned this? I'd rather be at the gallery, sipping overpriced wine surrounded by art rather than this," she gestured around, her voice laced with sarcasm that masked deeper fears. Nothing like a bit of adrenaline to liven things up, he replied, stepping closer, his shadow blending seamlessly with hers. Besides, it's more the company that counts. She feigned a prompting look, looking sideways at him. You mean the motor oil or the danger? Both are equally intoxicating. Touché, he responded, chuckling softly, the sound warm and inviting like the sun breaking through clouds. He paused, and for a moment the world outside faded away. But none of it compares to you, Laelani. You know that. His gaze bore into hers, a teasing twinge of seriousness in that moment, a vulnerability she had only seen glimpses of, yet it made her heart race. Before she could answer, the door behind them rattled violently, and both turned instinctively toward the sound. Murmurs and shouts escalated on the other side. The air grew heavier, laden with their shared unspoken fears, a visceral reminder of her husband's power and influence nearing like a storm on the horizon. Get back, Desmond said lowly, practically growling as he moved in front of her instinctively. His body blocking hers felt like a safeguard, an unyielding presence ready to protect her. She reveled in it, feeling both fearful and strangely exhilarated. Suddenly a flash of laughter erupted from the end of the hall. It was Henry, one of Desmond's closest friends, arguing with Mia, his sharp-tongued girlfriend. They were never short on banter. It was one of their defining charms.